Well, it's time now for Down to Earth, which is our weekly segment focused on the health of the planet. So, pesticides, microplastics, and the so-called forever chemicals, that is a cocktail of substances millions of French people are exposed to simply by drinking tap water. This is according to France's Union of Private Sector Doctors, publishing an open letter today to the government and warning the public as well about the risks that might pose. Our Environment Editor, Valerie Dekimpe, also with me in the studio to talk a little bit about this open letter. Valerie, we have heard in the past from activists, from NGOs, sounding the alarm about water pollution. We have now medics speaking out. How significant is that?
It is a major shift, Nadia, to see doctors who don't normally talk about the environment now come out and warn the public about water contamination and the health risks that poses. Now, this association publishing the letter represents doctors across the country. And last year, that same group published a different letter to the government once again, but warning about cadmium contamination, cadmium being a carcinogenic metal, and French people ingesting that through the food that they eat every single day. Now, a year later, they're issuing yet another letter to the French government, but related to a different set of toxic chemicals. But, the bottom line remains the same. Harming the environment does harm, public health. And it is quite considerable to see doctors who don't normally venture into more political territory, come out and speak out about this.
Okay, so what chemicals have been found and what are the possible risks for those of us that drink it?
Right, so you said pesticides, microplastic, PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, because it takes thousands of years for those chemicals to degrade. They're pretty much everywhere in our daily lives, whether it's non-stick pans, raincoats, or plastic packaging. The list goes on. And in the letter, doctors describe contamination as a systematic threat with far-reaching health consequences, citing known impacts on our hormones or immune systems, but also citing a rise in cardiovascular disease, cancer, and also reduced fertility. According to their analysis, even though 87% of the country's drinking water is considered safe because it's within the limits, the safe limits, 30% of the French population was found to be exposed to contaminated water at least once in 2024, according to their analysis. That's 18 million people. Now, when it comes to pesticides, 14 million people exposed, and microplastics, 400 particles per liter of tap water. They say that we're talking about widespread contamination, according to doctors there. Now, this is not brand new information. French public health authorities have already documented, this issue. But with doctors speaking out once again about this issue, it really shows that pressure is mounting on the government and governments around the globe to really address this.
Okay, so what then are health authorities trying to do?
Well, doctors are pointing out to a lack of oversight, the fact that authorities have minimized the risk of contamination. If you take the example of forever chemicals, France's water management body monitors 20 forever chemicals in tap water. But the reality is that there are about 15,000 substances out there, which we know of PFAS. So last January, the EU-wide protections came into force in the EU, forcing every single member state to monitor PFAS, forever chemicals, in tap water. New substances were added to the list of things that they had to screen for. New pesticides were also added to that list. And for the first time, microplastics were also added. Before they were not necessarily screened for in terms of tap water. The limits, though, according to NGOs, is that you're not targeting pollution at its source because factories, at least when it comes to forever chemicals, they can continue to manufacture forever chemicals, which we find in all of the products that we use every single day. And so if you're addressing the water quality, that's not the solution. You should be addressing the source of the pollution. France is actually ahead in terms of other countries when it comes to forever chemicals because they are now, the sale, production, and import of all products containing forever chemicals is now banned in France, except non-stick pans, and that is in the light of lobbying by French manufacturer Tefal, which, as you might know, is a major producer of non-stick pans.
And as you've been laying out here, this is a systemic problem. So individuals might feel like a little bit hopeless, but are there things that we can do at home to try and keep ourselves a bit safer?
Well, the first thing to say is that bottled water is not necessarily the solution. Several brands here in France have come under fire for their water containing actually pollutants. And the reason being is that even though mineral water, you might think that it's pure and so on, it's actually pumped out of aquifer and groundwater. And so pesticides, forever chemicals, are also infiltrating groundwater. And so you don't necessarily have mineral water that can be completely, safe. Plastic bottles, of course, as we know, are a major source of microplastic pollution, so we are not better off drinking bottled water. You also have filters. There's a lot of different filters on the market. Reverse osmosis and activated carbon are two of the most promising or sophisticated technologies that exist. Reverse osmosis is the same technology that is used in desalination plants. And activated carbon, you might have seen some chunks of charcoal that some people use in their jugs of water. It's not exactly the same, but it's the same idea, but within a filter. The thing, though, is that those are quite sophisticated filters. You have to, put them under your sink or directly on your tap. So it does require, quite a bit of work. They're professional filters, and so they're not cheap, of course. And there's also evidence that those filters also strip the water of some important minerals that we also need. So unfortunately, there's no easy, simple solution, but some things can be done, at least for people at home.
All right. Thank you so much, Valerie Dekimpe, for us there.